I'm Rebecca, I'm from the Oxplore team. We're here today to talk to a first year undergrad called Milena. She studies psychology, philosophy and linguistics, and she's going to talk to me today about our big question, are humans more important than animals? Let's go and find her. So, are humans more important than animals? So I guess before we start to answer this question, we need to really discuss what humans and animals are. So, Milena, what is a human?
It's a really hard question.
It is.
But I guess you could say a human is a sentient being, right? And then most of us would probably think, well, what makes us different from other sentient beings, we can make tools, really complex tools like computers and all that, and design them, and we can also have a sense of self, of identity. It's very complex, and we can have an understanding of the past. We study history and other human civilizations and culture, and we can have an understanding about the future. We think about what's going to happen in 50 years, 100 years, where's technology going to go. But we can also just think about the future in terms of we plan what we're going to do in 1 minute or 1 day or 1 year in maybe a more complex way than animals do, right? And maybe that's what we would say makes us human.
Brilliant. And so then on the flip side, what is an animal? What defines an animal?
So I think you could make an argument that animals do show really similar traits as well, also as sentient beings, so that you have animals that use really complex tools and use their environment and manipulate it in the same way we do. You have crazy things like octopi, plural of octopuses, that like crack coconut shells in a way to like use the hard shells as a tool. You have elephants who can categorize people and identify them and have a sense of self based on like their language or gender or age, which is pretty complex. And there's a chimpanzee that has a photographic memory, which I'm very jealous of.
Oh wow.
I'm sure most people would be as well. So I don't think that there's too much of a difference. I think you could somehow say that animals and humans are quite similar as well.
Okay. I like that.
Yeah.
But what about, for example, studying? Like we go to school, we go and study things. I mean, animals, do they do that? I don't know. Like, do they have that sense of rationality that we have?
Yeah, so you might say not in the exact same way because they don't write and their language isn't the same as ours, but animals definitely have a thing called metacognition, so that they can think about thinking, so they can reason in that way, in the same way we do. When we say, oh, like, I want to stay up late and watch telly, but I'm not going to because like I'll be tired in school tomorrow. Like, you can show that animals can delay gratification in the same way. And so this is a thing that some philosophers think is really important for defining humanness, is not only to have a desire, but then to rationally sort of think if you desire that desire. So a really funny example is the famous marshmallow study, which you might have heard of. So you can do this on really young children, like if you're 5. So imagine you're sitting at a table and you're given a marshmallow.
Yeah, can imagine.
Yeah, so there's a beautiful, beautiful marshmallow, and they're giving you this marshmallow. It looks really, really delicious, and you just really want this marshmallow. And they say, okay, we're going to give you this marshmallow, but if you wait, they don't tell you how long you have to wait.
Sure.
Then you're going to get a second marshmallow if you don't eat that marshmallow. And I would encourage anyone who wants to watch the videos of this, because it's really, really cute to see these 5-year-olds, because they just put it on the other end of the table and they try and turn away, and someone just poke it, and you can tell they just they really, really want it. And most humans, children, do pretty badly on this, because they just kind of eat the marshmallow, but like, who wouldn't? But this then links sort of, if you study the same individuals later, to sort of success at studying at university or in relationships, is this ability to delay your gratification and think if you desire what you desire. And these same tests have been done on some animals, and there's parrots who perform just as well as children, so they can wait 15 minutes, up to 50, and they understand the whole concept.
Wow.
And
that's amazing.
Yeah, and even certain monkeys, I think, as well, which is really cool. So animals can think about their thinking and
about their emotions and their motivations.
Yeah, and have metacognition and reason as well, yeah, I think.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Now we have to go to my department, but before we go, check this out. This is our college chapel, and there's a piano over there that anyone can use. Sometimes some people play jazz on it for free time. And now come with me to the physiology department.
Can we ever really know what an animal is thinking?
That's a really good question, if we're asking if animals can be rational. And I think probably not.
Okay.
So there's let's have a seat. Yeah. There's a really cool philosopher who has a paper on what it's like to be a bat, and he argues that we can know everything about what it would be like to be a bat, all the facts. We can know that it's true that they move around by sensing sound waves.
Okay.
So we can know about that, but we can't know what it's like. We can't know what it's like from the inside, in the way that if you'd never had vision, and I could explain vision to you really perfectly, you could know everything about it, but you couldn't know what it was like from the inside. So there's a difference knowing something from the inside and the outside. And so that we probably could not know what it's like to be a bat. And that seems like a really important difference for knowing from the inside or knowing from the outside, because if we ask the question, are animals more important or humans more important? If we're thinking about it from the outside, sort of from God's view or bird's eye view, then humans probably aren't more important. Like, they're all just beings on Earth. But if we think about it, like, are humans more important? Do I think a human is more important than an animal? If I had to save one rather than the other, from how we behave, our medical practices and factory farming and all these things, we do act as if humans were more important.
We do.
Yeah, and that's a big difference, so from the inside or from the outside, I guess. So, I don't know if we could know.
So one of the things that will spring to mind when we think about humans and animals is, unfortunately, the controversial issue of animal testing. What do we think about that topic?
So I have to read about it a lot for my course of experimental psychology, and it can be quite sad if you sort of read about how scientists discovered a toxin that can automatically create Parkinson's, which can be quite useful because then you have control over it, so you can always fake Parkinson's and then study it rather than have to wait for it to organically normally occur.
Sure.
So that's quite useful. But then, in the textbook it sort of said, we can, use this, and they gave all these rats Parkinson's, and I thought that was very heartbreaking. And it seems quite, especially if you're reading about the complexity of the nervous system all day, it seems quite painful. But one must admit, if I think about it, if, for example, someone in my family, if my great aunt or something got Parkinson's, and because some scientist gave Parkinson's to rats and then studied those rats and developed a cure for it or some medication against it, I would be incredibly grateful, and one would probably not think twice and say, oh, of course, this is more important, and there it seems that we treat humans as more important than animals, and I think it's a very difficult question, definitely, yeah. So what do you guys think? Are humans more important than animals?
So what about vegetarianism?
So that's a natural link to make with the question, are animals or humans more important?
Yeah.
I guess if you're vegetarian, you could be vegetarian for many different reasons. I have a friend who is vegetarian because of the environment, because they think it's better for the environment. But a lot of people are vegetarian, obviously, because they care about animals' feelings as well.
Sure.
And that can be linked back to a philosophy of utilitarianism, which especially Peter Singer, I think, in the mid-20th century sort of argued a lot for, saying that if utilitarianism is maximizing the greatest happiness for the greatest number, that's what is ethical, that's what's good, that's what we should do. And that includes animals, and that includes being vegetarian and minimizing factory farming and all this. So I think that bears quite heavily on the question if humans are more important than animals or not. Yeah.
So are humans more important than animals? Are humans and animals really that different?
I think, as we started, that's a really hard question.
Yeah.
But you can kind of assume from how we run experiments on them, and the fact that we use them in the first place is because we think, if it's good enough for a rat, it's good enough for us. Or if we can study in a Mackay monkey, an old-age Mackay monkey, if we see this is how memory works in their brain, we know that a lot of their brain lobes are really similar to ours,
yes,
and their functions. So we then say, this is how it works for a human. So a lot of the neurophysiology I've been taught this year is based on that. So we do hold them as similar, but then at the same time, if you want to do a really maybe controversial experiment of some kind about memory or cognition, you're likely not, as a scientist, to get approval to do it on humans, but on monkeys, because I guess we treat them as less important, and because maybe because they just have less rights. There's no what's it called, of human rights, the Declaration of Human Rights. There's no declaration. I mean, there is a Declaration of Animal Rights, but they're probably not the same.
Right.
And they can't defend themselves, and they're not as powerful, I guess, in that sense as maybe we might be. So I think it might be our obligation to sort of
Protect them.
balance that more.
Them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's sort of what I'd say, I think.
Good.
Yeah.